Excellent. The red light is on. I'm keeping my glasses on because I'm probably going to have to read some notes from this thing, so look out. So we'll see here. I guess let's get the first thing out of the way here, which is the first slide I always start with is like, what's this guy doing here? And a lot of you guys already know me, but about 8 years ago now, we founded officially North Shore Automation. I've been working in DAM for about 11 years. Now we're back to probably about 60 actual end-to-end DAM deployments, mostly centered on CatDV. It's a system we use a lot, though we've done some other stuff. And then about 150 companies own North Shore software of one kind or another. We make a whole bunch of different kinds of software now, actually. You know, if you don't know me, ask around on the floor. And people always say, I go, you can just ask people what they think of me. I'm not scared of that, so I should tell you what, you know, I've done all right so far. So when I came up with this idea for this thing, it was sort of the damned if you do, damned if you don't. It was really about whether or not people actually need, do I need a dam? And you know, although that's been my business, I don't actually think that everyone needs a dam. So it's kind of an interesting thing here. When I got into this, one of the reasons I did was because people had a problem when we switched from tape to digital. And I now, after thinking about it for like a decade now, a lot of people go, oh, well, digital's just way harder. I don't actually think digital's any harder than physical media. Physical media is way tougher to deal with. But I think that we were able to do things in a bad way when we went digital. In the old days, you know, the most key thing for me was actually that we made libraries. And when we went digital, we stopped really making libraries. We were able to just move on from media. People would keep their media together. And so I really think that people need to go back to the idea of keeping libraries. Whether or not you have a dam or not, you should basically curate your media because there's different values of media. And that's something I want to keep together, is that we're really looking a lot when you're designing your file system about the relative value of media over time. We think a lot really short term about the production and the project. Actually, some of the guys here that I've worked with before know a lot about this. We've actually done this in their systems. And like I said, you can do that with a dam or without. I have kind of a personal take on this whole idea. My dad was a pro bull rider. So he was a rodeo cowboy in the 60s. And I only have 2 pictures of him competing. And it's a huge thing for me. It really bums me out. There was a fire, he'd lost all his photos. And back in the 60s, guys were taking pictures. There's lots of pictures of rodeo, but nobody really thought it would be important. It was just a bunch of rednecks, you know, running around riding horses. And so nobody really protected that stuff and curated it. And so for me, it sort of taught me that you never know the value of what you're doing. And a lot of people say things like, oh, well, you know, we just make, you know, silly, weird YouTube videos of celebrities and stuff like that. But actually, you know, you never know what's going to happen with that media. And more importantly, you don't get to decide. The organization and history decides over time. So, you know, for me, production and post are only a small part of the media life cycle. And sometimes, because we're the people that are involved in that, we forget that. And we really need to start thinking organizationally instead of just thinking about, you know, about what we need short term. So do we need a dam? You know, I don't know. But I think that you do need libraries of some type, even if those don't have a database structure on them. So this is something that I pulled from a really cool book, Peter Crew. Storage and organization are not the same thing. Most of us think that they are. And in the physical world, storage and organization, the organizational structure are often inseparable. You put the tape or the hard drive in the box, it goes on the shelf, and I've stored it and I've organized it. And that's the way most people in post think. That is not organization. In a modern world, we're not constrained by that. Because trust me, the head of marketing does not think like your assistant editor. And the value of things is not the same. So I just wanted to lay that out. And then I want to introduce for any of you who are thinking about your file system structures, this is a term that I coined. At least I can't find it on the internet in any way used in this way, so I'm claiming it right now. In media context is how I get people out of thinking about my GoPro, my Red, my FS7, my C300. Different types of media, we try to think in categories. Are they sources? Are they camera masters? Are these deliverable masters? Are these rough cuts we're going to throw away? So we try to think in the context so that we can then assign value to media and then start to build libraries instead of thinking in a monolithic single process project structure. So my terms, I use source assets. Anything coming in, I just call it a source. I'm going to use that for this presentation. Anything going out is a master. We'll figure it out. I'm sure everyone's got their own flavor of that, but sources, masters. Another thing I talk about is common or global assets. Assets used across many or all projects, logos, bumpers, music. Everywhere I go, everyone's got this stuff in with their projects messed around. And when you rebrand or you change a logo, it's got to be put into 40 folders or not, and you use the wrong stuff constantly. This can cost you a lot of money. Music can cost you a ton of money. I actually have friends of mine who've made hundreds of thousands of dollars because people use their music illegally by mistake because it sounded just like something else and they used the wrong master. And then editorial assets, lovingly known as the editorial mess. Everything in the middle. I use a term called the myth of editorial asset management. I don't believe that editors need a damn because they know where it is. If I need to find something, I call an editor. But editors get fired, they get promoted, they leave, and they are not thinking about the organization. Again, they're thinking short term. So in those sort of categories of media, I want to talk a little bit about, for me, it's funny, there's a lot of heavy storage people here today. So I always laugh when I'm around that because one, I'm using a lot of terms in sort of weird ways, but I sort of generalize in a really, I mostly talk to people, I mostly talk to humans, so I think in terms of sort of a few eras of storage. Specifically, I start with direct attached storage, internal external hard drives, direct attached RAID. So for a lot of people, you know, that's what you have on your home machine. It was the first experience of storage. That's how people learn to organize things in a computer. And that's mostly how they think about it even now. People are super attached to their organizational structures. I know, because I've been trying to get people out of that for 10 years of my career now, right? And then you get into shared storage, SAN, NAS, you know, more exotic stuff. And for me, what I always say is that was supposed to be a game changer, but very few people changed their game. Most people migrated their structures from their direct attached storage or RAIDs onto a shared storage environment. Psychologically, I'll tell you the two main things that happens. Either the loudest person wins, which is often me, or like the rock star editor, you know, Francesca or Frank or whoever, that's how they want it. And that's how the storage gets organized during the production process or the post process. And then the next thing you know, we don't have time to change it and we move on. So we lived in this. Ironically, this only existed in post for a very little bit of time. We actually moved pretty quickly to shared storage, and now some of us here have been on this for like 20 years now, and we're still fighting these same battles. Now we're moving to something that I like to call multi-format, multi-location storage. You're talking about hierarchical storage, tier 1, tier 2 spinning disk, tape, you know, moving into object storage on-prem and in the cloud. And so for me, one of the weirdest things that happened is that tape used to not have a file system. And then LTFS, literally linear tape file system, came out. So now those folders that may or may not be well organized now get moved into the archive. So we're sending these bad ideas forward in time. And some poor sucker, you know, 20 years from now is going to come into that and try and figure it out. It's kind of a nightmare. And then object storage, which is amazing and flexible and you know, unbelievably you know, powerful, but object people around this floor are bending over backwards trying to make it work like a file system. You know, I had a great experience of a couple months ago. For about 20 minutes, I tried to explain why and how we move files in post to one of my developers, and they just looked at me like a dog, you know, like watching television. I had no idea, could not understand why we would ever move a file. And more with this more exotic storage, particularly with the speeds we have now, you don't really need to do that. You can put things in place and you know, thanks to scale logic, you can keep things the way they are and they can preserve through that. So really when I'm thinking of this, the reason we need to change this is not that something's wrong, it's just that it's short-sighted in my opinion, and I've seen nightmares over the years. So if we're gonna talk about, you know, why we would wanna change, there we go. Really the first one is time. Right now, finish the production versus forever. The organization has to think about the media life cycle all the way to the end. And for me, the media life cycle also for organizations includes acquisition at some point, hopefully. So access, Do I have easy and granular access to my most important assets? Do I have to go pick and choose them out of a bunch of stuff? Or are they where I can lay hands on them quickly? Because guess what? Your boss already thinks you're doing this. Everyone thinks that you are doing this. They think this is happening. I'll give you a couple nightmare stories of this. I have a customer that I worked at, actually, our old friend Ed, and we went in and they make, God bless them, they say this too, they make silly celebrity videos. It's a paparazzi company, and they put them on YouTube. They make a great living doing it. And so they had 18,000 videos of celebrities, and they were all put up to YouTube, big channel. Somebody came to them from Europe and said, we want all your content, 18,000 clips. We're going to put them on another platform and monetize them in Europe, and here's all the money you're going to make. So they came in, they brought me back in after like a year or whatever, and we gave them, in literally a couple hours, the 7,000 clips that had all the metadata and a beautiful high-res master and organized on storage, and put them on a drive. They have 18,000 clips, not 7,000. So the boss said, where's the other 11,000? Those were before we were there. And those, they saved the project file. Editor's always about the project file. I have a lot of Cytex and Videosphere and Strassner and Media 100 project files. Y'all can all have them. They're not very valuable to me anymore. But so they had the project file, and they had a bunch of tapes that were loosely done, because what they had done is they had exported a low res to go to YouTube, and then they thought, well, we've got the tape. I've got the project file. I'll just reconstitute it if we ever need to. That works for maybe 50 files. It doesn't work for 11,000. So as a result, they made way less money than they thought they were going to make, and everyone learned an important lesson. I was much more popular, but there was a lot of difficult times around there. So, and then the last reason is, speaking of that, is automation. The post-production is the least automated. It's the most manual thing in the world. Everyone thinks we're super high tech because we have high-powered computers and storage, but it's so manual. We're just now, I joke that I named my company North Shore Automation 5 years before anybody wanted to automate anything. And so, so the big ones right now are archive and storage migrations. People bought archives, and they now need to get off those archives and move them. And you need things that you can automate. Storage, same thing. We're changing storage so often. ScaleLogic loves that, I'm sure, but everything gets faster, everything gets bigger, everything physically gets smaller, which is also baffling to me. And then this one, I've been doing a pitch like this for about 10 years. 10 years I've been coming, I've been saying these things were gonna happen, and I never had any negative outcomes to actually report. I've got one. So everybody got some bad news. Sorry, Adam. Apple sent out a nice little thing here and said, hey, by the way, QuickTime's not going to play all this stuff anymore because we're moving on. We're going to drag you all into the future. So, sure, you'll figure out another way to play this. But the truth is, boy, it would be super easy if you just knew what the stuff you needed to do. Could you flip that quickly? Most people, if you're working in a project structure, cannot, because you got to go pick the sources and the masters out of every project. Unless you have a DAM. A DAM could help you with that, but if you're not going to have a DAM, you really need to be thinking about that stuff. So, do we need a DAM? I don't know. Now I'm up to a maybe, right? I started at a no, I'm at a maybe. But now you're starting to see some ideas about why you might want one. I have no idea what my slides are here now. I think I'm going to look now and see how we might change. Let's take a look at that. This is the worst presentation ever. All right. First thing I want to remind you, monolithic project folder structures, short term, and I hate them. I hate them. I want to move you to media libraries. And also, it looks like Apple has done something exciting for me. Yes, good times. I'll give you slides later. So for some reason right now, actually, hold on a minute. Let me just do this. A lot of people don't know, that actually Keynote was Steve Jobs' favorite product, and it was pretty great. But it was not, since he died, the most stable product. There we go. There we go. You can edit that, right? So when we're talking about media libraries, I like to apply different values to different types of assets, right? So we've got your master library, your editorial assets, where we're not going to bother the editors, they're going to be able to work here. And we've got source library, so everything coming in. So if you think about it, if you're talking about the actual relative value, I guarantee you this is the most important to the organization, absolutely. We can argue about it all day. I say that sources are next. Reason is, you interview somebody and somebody that's in a piece, maybe I want to put something together out of that person. And then down here, editorial assets. I argue with editors all the time about this, only for my rate, by the way. If you want to argue after this, you have to hire me. But editorially, over time, this is going to be worth less right away. And the other thing about this that's really interesting is we keep all that editorial mess together because I've never seen somebody need to pull one asset out of an editorial project. You might need to bring it back and edit. These, asset by asset, you may actually need. So we want to start thinking about that. In a file structure, the way it may look is you could put together, a master library, source library, editorial projects are in here. So when you're running through this, you can lay your projects. This is the traditional way. Footage is in here, your outputs are in here. 5 years from now, someone's going to be digging through this, trying to get it all out of here. It's going to be a nightmare. If you move to something like this, sources are over here, and they're arranged by project. You can still get to them. People can share them. People can use them again. It's a library. You can't do this without really good storage. You can't do this without a lot of storage. I think that's probably why you guys invited me here, is because I'm actually suckering you all into buying a lot more storage. But I'm also betting on history. History shows me that you're all going to have petabytes of storage. Some of you do already, but you're all going to have petabytes. We all are. It's going to get cheaper, faster, bigger. That's what happens. When it does, this is going to be there. You want to move this off to archive? Great. You're going to move a clean library off to an archive. And when you want to bring it back, it's going to come right back and it's going to relink. Your editors are going to be thrilled. You get your common assets. Same thing here. You can lay out your masters however you want. If the company, God forbid, shuts down, if the company is acquired, that's going to be the thing that everybody wants. That's the thing that everyone's going to ask about. When you make those hard decisions, what are we going to get rid of? You don't have to go shuffling through frantically before the cloud account is shut down. You can actually move this stuff out. If somebody buys something, they're going to want to see this. And so, if you don't want to do that, you definitely need a DAM. Because then in a DAM, you can tag those masters, you can put them wherever you want. The bad news is, for me and Jeremy over there from Squarebox, people don't love to do that. So I say hedge your bet. Lay your storage out intelligently, so if they don't use the DAM, you're still okay. The other thing is if they do that storage thing, then we can all automate your DAM so that it does it automatically. Cliff here has a pretty much fully automated master processing system that he does not have to, we've tricked his editors into building his library for him. So we're not really, like I said, not really trying to talk you into that DAM, but I definitely want to talk you into libraries. In closing, I would like to say, what we're really doing here is trying to get you to use all this technology, all the advances in speed and scale and flexibility and storage, to let go of an idea that was born when we first got our hard drives in our computers, and bring back an idea that has literally worked for thousands of years. We're recording history. That's what video people do, whether we think about it or not. And since the beginning of recorded history, libraries have worked to secure and curate data. I hope this media lasts for hundreds of years. I really do. So people don't have to look for pictures of their dad, look for video, look for any of it. And I invite you all to think about this. You may think that you're just making silly videos of celebrities, but you never know. One of them might turn out to be a president someday. Thank you guys very much. All right. We got any questions or anything? Anybody want to talk? I'm going to turn the mic off so we can actually just hang out and talk a little bit around here. I'm going to hang out for a bit. So thank you guys. I want to thank ScaleLogic for having me. I want to thank Jeremy from Squarebox, CatDV, hooking this thing up. And we'll hopefully see you guys on the show floor.